Let's have a look at what Secretary Dave Oliver has to say.
That gap is going to continue to grow, and it could well lead to an underclass or a working poor in this country. Now, we know that workers are doing it tough. We know that there's real cost of living pressures on workers out there, and this increase may relieve a bit of that, but by no means is it going to be enough. Now, shortly you'll hear from two cleaners, Marie and Jamal, who are working award-reliant workers, and they'll share their story about how tough they're actually doing it out there. Questions?
Part of the decision mentioned the carbon tax, that they wouldn't be taking into account the carbon tax. Do you think that's something that perhaps the Fair Work should have taken into account?
Well, we do know that employers were putting, as part of their argument, were attempting to take the compensation that the government was going to pay which was directed to the most vulnerable in our community. Employers were attempting to take those payments and put it in their own pockets. You know, we're concerned about the increases of the cost of living. We know electricity's going up, utilities, petrol and water costs, you know, this $17 wage increase will not keep up with that cost of living pressures.
Will the ACTU rethink the strategy of going for the dual increase, you know, a flat dollar amount for the lowest paid and a percentage for those higher?
Look, that's something that we'll consider for next year. But our main concern is whether it's a percentage increase or a flat dollar increase, whichever way you want to portray it, it's certainly not enough. $17 a week is not enough, you know, and we are very concerned that we've got, you know, this growing gap between workers who are able to negotiate a collective agreement and those that cannot. I mean, last year alone, workers covered by collective agreements got a 4% wage increase. Today, minimum wage earners have now got, you know, less than 3%. This gap is widening, and if it continues to go this way, we can end up with an underclass or a working poor in this country.
The panel rejected submissions by the services industry to be exempt from this wage increase. Do you think this is a sound decision, and do you think employers are really trying to basically cop out and not pay their workers what they should be paying?
Well, I think, you know, since every national wage case that's been had, employers have always argued on tried to find reasons why not to pay on reasonable wage increases to low-paid workers in this country. Now, we know that there were some employer groups that argued for a 0% increase for minimum wage earners in this country. Now, we're pleased that the bench has rejected those arguments. We know, for example, there are some sectors in the retail and hospitality industry that may be doing it tough, but there are other sectors that are going quite well. That was recognised in the decision, you know, you know, Justice Ross had noted that Australia's economy performance has been reasonably strong over the past year. It also noted that labour productivity growth has improved, but it also noticed that the profit share remains near its record high levels and underlying inflation is contained. But also, what wasn't stated was while the profit share is at a record high, the wage earnings proportion of that is at a record low. It's at the levels that we saw back in 1960.
The $26 a week that you were seeking, was that at the lower end of the scale in your claim? Or?
Yeah, $26 was at the lower end, and our claim would have seen at least the gap being stabilised, not widening. Anything less than $26 has now seen the widening gap that's occurred, and that's why we're extremely disappointed on the $17 decision that's been handed down today.
Do you think the federal government has perhaps lost focus on looking after Australia's lowest paid?
Well, it's not a decision that's handed down by the federal government. This is an independent tribunal that had put in place. I mean, the federal government itself, in the budget papers, forecasted wage growth to be around about 3.6%. This decision hasn't even kept up with that. This decision hasn't recognised the real wage movements that are happening out there for the bulk of workers that are covered under collective agreements. This is one that is leaving the most vulnerable workers in our society behind. And if there's any lesson out of this, it will be this, that those most vulnerable workers, they need to be looking at joining trade unions and negotiating collective agreements. Last year, 4% wage increase. Minimum wage earners are being left further and further behind. I think on that note, we might ask Marie and Jamal to share their stories with us. Marie?
Hi, my name's Marie Ann Grilli, and I've worked in cleaning for 32 years. 2 years ago, I had a stroke. and I've had to cut my hours. I used to work 7.5 hours. I now have to work 4.5 hours. My wage is $16.39 an hour, and the only reason I survive is because I work unsociable hours and I get a penalty rate. We've asked Spotless to come to a collective bargaining meeting, and Spotless has refused. Spotless's excuse is that there are a lot of sham cleaning companies out there, and I say to Spotless, if they can name the sham cleaning companies, we'd be more than happy to go and see them. But using that as an excuse is not acceptable, and shows no respect for their cleaners. So we are trying to get Spotless to come to an agreement, but they still have refused to sit down and do that.
Marie, realistically, what difference would $17.10 a week make?
It will make really hardly any difference to us. Luckily, I've paid off my mortgage, but the rising cost of gas, electricity, water is just going up all the time, and it really makes very little difference to me personally.
Marie, how hard is it to make ends meet each week?
My wage it's extremely hard. I've got to pay the gas, the electricity. I've got to come to work, so I've got to put petrol in my car. So realistically, my wage, I'm going backwards. I'm not going forwards.
Jamal? Thank you.
My name is Jamal Adam Babikir. I work as a cleaner for last 13 years. Now I was employed by Spotless Chadstone Shopping Centre. Last year we get 3.4% pay increase, and this year we get 2.9. Does that mean our life going down? Our life should be improved, and we have to get more income. And really, I am near 60 years old. I have to do full-time job, 7.6 hours a day. Really, when I get back home, I feel the pain. I think many times to cut my hours, but I can't make it because I have to do more hours to get more income to survive. I rent a government flat for $1,300 a month. I have to support my son to go to university. I have to support my family back home. Really, we ask Spotless to come to the table to negotiate. The sad thing, Spotless went to the table with CBD. They have agreement to get pay increase like 4 or 5% every year. They had agreement with the cleaner at the airport. I don't know why they refuse to come to the shopping center cleaner. Really, we have to ask them to come to the table. And we didn't ask them more than 4% for next 3 years. And they don't want to listen to us. Thank you.
Jamal, do you find the $17.10 a week an insult?
Absolutely. After tax, it's going to be around $14 or $13. Really, it doesn't help. You can't feel it.
But what can you do with that $14 then?
I don't know what to do with them even, really. I think about them, I don't know what to do with them. Really, I am disappointed, really.
Is your cost of living going up in recent times?
Yeah, absolutely. Imagine the petrol price now. I used to fill my car, it cost me like $30 gas. Now it costs me around $50 just. Real.
What do you say to the delegates of Fair Work Australia?
I said to them, they have to listen to us, They have to look to the situation carefully, not just like just to look to it and make a decision. They have to search around, they have to listen to work in this country, how much they struggle to survive.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you. We can go.
And we were listening to an ACTU news conference. That last person you heard speaking was Jamal. He's a low-income worker speaking at the ACTU news conference on the increase in the minimum wage to $606.40 per week. That was an increase of about $17 per week, which the unions argue was not enough.